Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Okay, welcome back. Now is the time we go around and introduce ourselves. My name is Jake Morgan.
Eric.
My name is Ketra. Gigi.
Michael.
Baruch.
My name is Ray Dyer.
I'm George.
Eric.
My name is Roy.
Paul.
My name is Richard.
Jay Davidson.
Antoine.
Glenn. I'm Richard Azzolini.
Richard.
I'm Jerry.
My name is Kate.
I'm Doug.
My name is John.
I'm John.
My name is Paul Shepard.
Jack.
I'm Tom Bruein.
My name is Bill.
Marvin.
Peter.
My name is Clint.
Anthony.
My name is Andreas.
My name is Andre.
My name is Steve.
My name is Jim.
My name is Gary.
My name is Carl Wolf. David Lewis.
On.
David Hickson.
My name is Ty.
My name is Peter.
I'm Bernardo.
I'm William. I'm Jim Stewart.
Anyone else? Is anyone here for the first or second time? No, welcome. Please stay after for scones and tea. Our speaker today is Tova Green. Tova began sitting at Green Gulch Farm in 1990 after many years of Vipassana and became a San Francisco Zen resident, San Francisco Zen Center resident in 1999 and was ordained a priest in 2003. She is a hospice social worker at Hospice by the Bay, and she co-leads the Queer Dharma Group at the San Francisco Zen Center that was started last year. Please welcome Tova.
Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful Sunday morning, and I'm very happy to be here. I would like to thank Baruch for inviting me and for all of you who help make this Sangha happen every Sunday morning. It's quite wonderful, and thank you all for coming. The topic I'd like to talk about this morning is the pleasure of giving. I'd like to talk about some of the mind states that encourage us to give and somehow bring out the best in us. A little while ago, I read an op-ed in the New York Times by a columnist. Can all of you hear me, by the way? Yeah. Okay. A columnist named Nicholas Kristof. Perhaps some of you are familiar with his columns. Now I've become an avid reader of his columns. There's usually one every Sunday in the News of the Week in Review section. And the one I read first was called What Could You Live Without? And that article has really prompted me to reflect on giving, which is actually a very important part of Buddhist practice in all traditions. But the article started like this. It all began with a stop at a red light. And it goes on to tell the story of a father and daughter who were driving, and the daughter was coming home from a sleepover. I think she was 13 at the time, and her name was Hannah. And when they stopped at this red light, they saw on one side of the street a man parking his Mercedes coupe, and on the other side of the street, a homeless man sitting on the sidewalk begging for food. And Hannah said to her father, if that man drove a less fancy car, maybe the homeless man could have more to eat. And when they got home, she started asking her parents what they could do to change things in their household so they could give to people who had less than they did. And one day, and I think her mother, it sounded like she was irritated, she said, "What do you want us to do, sell the house?" And Hannah said, "Yeah, that's a great idea." And the family talked about it. There were the parents, and Hannah had a younger brother. And they lived in a large house, which the parents had gotten so that their children could have a lot of space. They thought that would be helpful for them as they grew up. And they decided to sell their house and buy a much smaller house and give whatever the difference was in the cost of the new house and their old house to an organization that benefited people somewhere in the world who were hungry or needed assistance. And they ended up having quite a lot of money to donate. I think it was $900,000, so it must have been a huge house. And they searched for an organization that they thought would be appropriate and found one in New York called the Hunger Project that works in West Africa and develops micro-lending projects for women and projects to help the people in villages access water and provide materials and seeds for small farms and so on. And that project has been going on for a long time. And one of the things that happened when they moved into their smaller house was they discovered that it brought them closer because they had less space to hide away, and they were spending much more time together as a family. And then they also had an opportunity to go to Africa and visit some of the projects that their money was helping to fund. And they've written a book together, the father and daughter, called The Power of Half, which I think is going to be coming out this month. But made me think about a few things. One is, hearing about the effect of living in a smaller house really had a parallel for me in thinking about my decision to move into Zen Center and let go. I had to let go of quite a few of my belongings. I did store some of them in a friend's basement, but gradually I let go of those because I wasn't using them, all the books and kitchen things. And, those of us, there are about 45 residents at San Francisco Zen Center, and we each live in a single room. We share a bathroom, and we have a kitchen crew that prepares our meals. We all do a kitchen shift every week to make that happen. And we have fewer things materially. I don't need my own iron or my own pots and pans and so on. But what we have that, for me, it makes sense ecologically that we each don't have all of the same equipment, but also we have a sense of community. And it's not always easy to live with that many people, and there are always people I feel more drawn to, and others I feel are my Dharma teachers because I have some difficulty in living with them. But it's a very rich experience of, at meals, being able to talk about what somebody's reading or a talk that we heard about the Dharma, or find out about somebody's interest in movies or music or poetry. One of my house jobs is to bake cookies every week. We have a Saturday program at San Francisco Zen Center with a talk that's open to the public, and then we serve tea and cookies. So every week I bake about 150 cookies. And one night I was in the kitchen baking, and a resident came into the kitchen who's a poet, and she asked me if I had heard of a certain poem, and I said, no, I hadn't. And she came back with the poem and read it to me as I was putting cookies on the cookie sheets. And often now she comes into the kitchen when I'm baking and reads poetry to me, and I think, wow, how lucky am I to be able to have that kind of experience. Just getting back to that article, Nicholas Kristof also did some studying of some of the work of neuroscientists who have done research where they can demonstrate by hooking their research subjects up to things that measure their physical response, that when people thought about giving something away, in this case giving money away, but it could be giving anything away, there were certain responses that were very similar to the responses they had when they were thinking about food that they liked or about sex, some of the more basic pleasures in life. So that there's some scientific research that something in our bodies is activated when we give that's very pleasurable. So in Zen practice, and I think this is true in all Buddhist traditions, giving is a very important quality to develop. There's thinking about giving, it's the first of the 6 what are called paramitas. They're qualities that help develop the mind of a bodhisattva. And a bodhisattva means awakened being. Bodhi is awakening and sattva is being. And one of the reasons that we practice, or a path of practice, is to develop in us the qualities of awakening, the qualities of these bodhisattvas who really think about the importance of helping others to wake up, and so that we're practicing not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings. And the first of these 6 qualities or paramitas is giving. And the Pali word for that is dana. So some of you may be very familiar with dana. If you go to retreats at places like Spirit Rock, there's often a collection of dana for the teacher. And so dana is the Pali word for giving. And the literal meaning of paramita is that which has reached the other shore. The 6, so there are 6 paramitas: giving. The second one is shila, or right conduct. Kshanti, which is patience or tolerance. Virya, or energy. Dhyana, or meditation. And prajna, or wisdom. And they're all qualities that can help us develop our full capacity to live an awakened life. And dana paramita consists of giving both in the material sense, but also in the spiritual sense, and developing qualities in ourselves of compassion and kindness. And when we think about giving, some of us may not have much in the way of material possessions or money to give away, but there are many other ways of giving, including giving our time, volunteering, giving our presence, being there for a friend who's troubled or just wants someone who can listen, giving in the form of a smile or a touch. Recently, I had a cold, and at breakfast I was sneezing, and someone noticed that I was sick, and I decided to go to work that day because I wasn't feeling that sick, that I needed to stay home. But when I came back from work, someone had left a thermos outside my door of hot ginger lemon honey tea, and it turned out it was we have a community that spans many generations. Our youngest resident is 3 and the oldest one is 93. And our senior Dharma teacher, Blanche Hartman, who's in her 80s, had left me that thermos of tea, which really made it. I drank it and it felt so much better. And just that kind of thoughtfulness was a real gift for me. And I think it contributed to my feeling much better the next day. So another way in which we think about giving, at least in the Zen tradition, but I think in other Buddhist traditions as well, we practice with the precepts. And once a month at Zen Center we do a full moon ceremony. It's called a bodhisattva ceremony, where we recite and renew our commitment to practice with the precepts. And there are 16 precepts that we take. The first 3 are taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And the second are called the pure precepts. And there are different translations. One that we sometimes do is, I vow to embrace forms and ceremonies, or I vow to refrain from all evil. That's the first one. The second one, I vow to make every effort to live in enlightenment, or I vow to do all good. And the third is, I vow to live and be lived for the benefit of all beings. And that's, again, a bodhisattva vow. But then we have 10 grave precepts, and you may be familiar with these, but I think I'll just recite them. And 2 of them have to do with giving. So the first is, I vow not to kill. I vow not to take what is not given. And that one has to do with, sometimes these are also phrased in the positive, I vow not to kill, but to cherish life. I vow not to take what is not given, but to give freely of what I have. I vow not to misuse sexuality. I vow not to lie or to refrain from false speech. I vow not to intoxicate mind or body of self or others. I vow not to slander. I vow not to praise self at the expense of others. I vow not to be avaricious. And this is the other one that has to do with giving. I vow not to be avaricious or possessive of anything. I vow not to harbor ill will. And I vow not to disparage the 3 treasures, which are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So working with the precept about not being avaricious, how do we express that? How do we express that spirit of not clinging or not holding on to things, but sharing what we have, and actively express our giving? And Suzuki Roshi, who was the founder of Zen Center, said, it's relatively easy to be enlightened when you're sitting in the meditation hall, but the point of our practice is to extend the energy and composure of our sitting practice into daily life. And one of those is through the practice of giving. So traditionally, we think of 3 broad categories of gifts: material gifts, gifts of fearlessness, and gifts of Dharma. Reb Anderson, who's a teacher at Green Gulch Farm Zen Center, wrote a wonderful book about the precepts called Being Upright. Perhaps some of you may be familiar with it. And in the chapter on not being avaricious or on giving, he talks about not only the gifts of material things, fearlessness, and our practice, but the gift of love, which is really what underlies all forms of giving. I think It's the love that comes from understanding that we're all connected. And I think this leads to a feeling of abundance rather than a feeling of there not being enough, and finding it hard to give. So I just want to talk a little bit. I think all of us are familiar with material forms of giving that we can do. Sometimes I know I receive a lot of mail requesting donations from all kinds of organizations. And one of the things I actually really enjoy doing is at the end of the year, I usually I like to give money at the end of the year, and I read through the letters that I've received and decide how much I'm able to give, and then I want to give a certain amount of my money to arts organizations, some money to LGBT organizations, some money to other Dharma centers, some money to peace and justice organizations. And then as I write the checks, I just really feel that this helps me express what I value, in my life. I can't necessarily work in all of the organizations or for all of the organizations whose work I appreciate, but I can support them in that way. And there are other ways of supporting the organizations whose work we cherish. Volunteering is one, but or even just telling our friends about them can be very beneficial. But that act of material giving is something that I find actually gives me a lot of joy. And you may have other ways in which you give that is nourishing to you. And so examples of the gift of fearlessness could be, visiting someone who's having a difficult time and just being there with your presence, being able to listen, being able to sit by the bedside of someone who's ill. I've found that the years I've been doing hospice work have really helped me develop that quality of fearlessness. When I started as a volunteer for Zen Hospice Project, and the volunteer coordinator, who's still volunteering, who's still the volunteer coordinator and trains many volunteers every year, his name is Eric Pochet, is a man who has just a tremendous amount of composure and warmth. And he taught me so much about sitting by the bedside of someone who's dying and just being present, breathing with that person, not necessarily having to say anything. Sometimes when people are in the active stage of dying, they can no longer speak, but they can be aware of the presence of sometimes a loving touch or chanting or words that you may say. But it's not so much what you say, but actually just being there and not being afraid of what you see, what you feel. So I'm very grateful to have been taught by somebody who kind of embodies a kind of fearlessness. And I find now in my hospice work, when I walk into a room with someone who's dying and family members or friends who are often upset, that my just being there and being calm and caring can make a difference. So I think that's something that all of us can cultivate. And I also feel that meditation practice helps to cultivate that, being present with some of my own mind states and just learning that I don't have to be afraid. So, and then gifts of the Dharma can be quite wonderful, and sharing our practice with one another and understanding there's no separation between us. And, I think in a situation like this, I'm the one right now who's speaking, but if you weren't here, this wouldn't be happening. We're creating this experience of sharing the Dharma together. And it's something we can share as we leave this morning. I want to just quote a few words of Reb Anderson about giving. If you can give this treasure, particularly the treasure of the Dharma, you will realize the ultimate concern of your life. You will fulfill your appropriate service to each being that you meet. Stinginess here means being afraid to find out the secret gift that will bring your relationship to others, that will bring your relationships to flower. It's not enough for you just to give material things and to give fearlessness. You must also give this thing that is the heart's desire of all beings. How can you find it? How can you give it? In all your relationships, in each moment, ask the question, what is being asked of me? What is the most precious thing that I can give right now? This is the Dharma treasure. So I also want to acknowledge that there are times when we feel we don't have anything to give. We may feel tired, sick, depleted, depressed. And I think it's really important to recognize those times and those feelings. And sometimes that may point to a need to take some time to give to ourselves. Take some time out, get some extra sleep, do something really pleasurable, take a bath, eat something delicious. But I think often when we feel we have nothing to give, that's a sign that it really is important to pay attention to our own needs. And one of the things Eric Pochet taught us when we were training to be hospice volunteers, we would do 5-hour shifts at Laguna Honda Hospital, which has a hospice ward. And he always told us to take a 6th hour. And in that 6th hour, after our 5-hour shift, to do something for ourselves, to take a walk or spend time with a friend or have a hot bath or whatever whatever might replenish and nourish us. So thinking about that 6th hour, I think, is an important part of the practice of giving. What can we do to nourish ourselves so that we have plenty to give? Another thing that can come up for sometimes is a feeling of giving from obligation. Recently I talked to someone who said he didn't really enjoy giving because he felt obligated. One example he gave was he felt obligated to give away a certain amount of money, and so he didn't feel much joy about writing checks to organizations on his list. And I think for me, a way of working with that, an antidote for that kind of feeling of giving out of obligation, is to get back in touch with gratitude for the work that's being done by all of these groups. And I feel for myself tremendous gratitude for my own life. I think, one of the things that I experience in working with hospice patients, many of my patients are younger than me. And I think, how did I live to this age? And being healthy and with enough energy to enjoy my work, enjoy my life at Zen Center. And I feel very grateful. And that also contributes to my feeling that I just want to give because I have so much. And I think coming from that sense of gratitude makes it easier to give and to connect with joy in giving rather than giving from a sense of obligation. And I'll just say on a personal note, this year I'm going to have my 70th birthday. It's not until November, but I've been thinking about it a lot. and reflecting on what I have to give and to offer others. And I think at this point in my life that what gives me the most pleasure is working with students. At Zen Center, I have the opportunity to meet with students one-on-one and do what we call practice discussions. And a lot of the students are new residents at Zen Center. Some people come from outside. And feeling that there's this wish to, kind of pass on to the next generation something of what I've learned in my life and what I value the most, which really is practice. So I find it very rewarding to meet with students and hear their questions. And I also think that by showing up in the meditation hall in our Zendo every morning, I can encourage other people just by my example. I know I feel very encouraged by Blanche Hartman, who's I referred to earlier, who made that hot ginger lemon drink, who in her mid-80s comes to the Zendo every morning. And when the doorbell rings, she's often the one who will go and answer it. So I want to come back to the article that I mentioned earlier by Nicholas Kristof. The daughter in that article said that no one expects anyone to sell a house as a way of giving. That's kind of a ridiculous thing to do. For us, the house was just something we could live without. It was too big for us. Everyone has too much of something, whether it's time, talent, or treasure. Everyone does have their own half. You just have to find it. So if you think about your life, in what ways do you give, and what is your half that you can give away? I'd like to read a poem as a way of closing, and then see if there are any questions or comments. I really want to have some time for discussion. So this is a poem by Naomi Shihab Nye. She's a Palestinian-American poet who lives in San Antonio, Texas, and one of the things she does is teach poetry in the schools. I think she comes to Zen Center every June and then gives a poetry and Zen workshop at Tassajara Zen Mountain Center. And I think this June she may be giving a poetry reading in the city. So keep your ears open. She's a wonderful presence. This one is called So Much Happiness. It is difficult to know what to do with so much happiness. With sadness, there is something to rub against, a wound to tend with lotion and cloth. When the world falls in around you, you have pieces to pick up, something to hold in your hands, like ticket stubs or change. But happiness floats. It doesn't need you to hold it down. It doesn't need anything. Happiness lands on the roof of the next house, singing, and disappears when it wants to. You are happy either way. Even the fact that you once lived in a peaceful treehouse and now live over a quarry of noise and dust cannot make you unhappy. Everything has a life of its own. It too could wake up filled with possibilities of coffee cake and ripe peaches, and love even the floor which needs to be swept, the soiled linens and scratched records. Since there is no place large enough to contain so much happiness, you shrug, you raise your hands, and it flows out of you into everything you touch. You are not responsible. You take no credit, as the night sky takes no credit for the moon, but continues to hold it and share it, and in that way be known. So may we all experience the pleasure of giving. And I wonder if there are any questions or comments. Yes.
You mentioned scarcity versus abundance, and it's something I struggled with for many years because I think I grew up in a household where scarcity was emphasized, and then I studied economics, and that's a scarcity model, and society to a large extent I think is based on scarcity. And so from my own perspective, it seems like there's always been a shortage of everything, you know. I struggle to make money and save money and to buy a house, and consequently, I think I'm a hoarder, and it's kind of it's a challenge to open up and to give and to share. And you see, I feel like I'm such a nasty person, and I'm so closed in because I'm just holding on to things, and rather than donating, I'll list something on eBay to make a few dollars. I'm actually just be giving it away. And so that's the personal challenge that I've had with that whole subject.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that, I heard the laughter. I think other people probably can relate to what you're saying. And I think there are a couple of things that I think can help with that, because all of us have I think both a tendency to hold on to things and sometimes a wish to give things away, and that can be cultivated. One of the things Reb Anderson talks about is a way of developing that ability to give and that sense of wanting to give is by thinking about giving things away before you actually give anything away, and just developing the thought about giving things away. But I think, when we can tap into that, an awareness that our lives are not separate, that someone else's suffering affects us, someone else's joy affects us, then it's also easier to give things away. And I think for me, the other part that I've become extremely aware of doing hospice work is that we can't take anything with us. And that it's helpful before we die to think about where we want our belongings to go, or how we're going to deal with our money and our belongings. And can be an act of kindness, actually, to give things away so that they're not all left for someone else to deal with when we die. I don't know if that's at all helpful to you, but one of the things that we chant at Zen Center, we have a formal meal sometimes, and there's a part of the meal chant that says, no giver, receiver, or gift. So in the ultimate realm, there's no separation, because when you're receiving, someone else is giving, and there's a kind of reciprocity, giver, receiver, and gift, and there's no separation between the three. That may be a little abstract, but so you might just try developing a generosity practice that can help you work with that feeling of scarcity. I think it's really a mind state, because they say, for example, there's enough food in the world that no one should go hungry, but it's the way it's distributed. So many people do experience hunger. And how can we shift that? How can we shift that in our own practice, in our own lives? And I think it does start in our minds. So I really appreciate your question. Yes.
For me, one of the biggest challenges is the sense of the immensity of the suffering of the world, in the world, and how I can get trapped into sort of measuring the smallness of my gift relative to the suffering. It feels like it couldn't possibly make any difference. And I know that, in an intimate situation such as the work that you do, you can see that difference. But for me, that's a a trap or a challenge with the work of generosity.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes the need can be overwhelming. You know, you think, well, it's just a drop in a bucket. But I had a friend who was a social change worker, and I've done a fair amount of social change work over my life, or activism, you might say. And it was very helpful to she had an image of a carpet, a big carpet, so big that one person could not pick it up and move it. But if a lot of people stood on the edges of the carpet and lifted it and moved it, you could move the carpet. And so I think, you know, to one person alone, you may feel you can't make a difference. But if you think about so many other people also working on whatever issue it is, or if you're able to make a small donation, other people are also making small donations, it adds up. So I think that can help with the feeling that it's just so overwhelming, why do anything at all, or that my action or my gift isn't going to make a difference. I think everyone's actions do make a difference, no matter, and it's hard to, you know, we get into comparing mind very easily, and I think we can only each give what we can give, whether it's, you know, in terms of energy or material things, but it's significant. You know, I don't know, is that helpful to you? I mean, perhaps you could just appreciate yourself for giving what you give instead of, you know, it's like, is the glass half empty or half full? And I think often we tend to notice what we don't do or can't do rather than what we do. Yes. So you had a question there, I think. Yes.
Well, the idea of you get more when you give than you receive more when you give. The old idea is the more you get, the happier you are. The opposing idea is the more you give, the happier you are. And at some point, I began to notice, you know, for me, the difference in that. You know, we all try to get things, wealth, money, whatever, but there's a limited amount of real satisfaction in that. And the more you open up and observe the experience of giving, you receive more that way. I guess what I'm trying to say is the road to happiness is more through the act of giving than receiving.
You found that personally?
Yeah. And that, I don't know how that came out as an explanation, but I could feel that organically, mm-hmm. and it made a lot of sense and difference in my own life.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that is what I've been also talking about, and how practice can help us develop those qualities. You know, I don't know what turned that for you.
I think it's really observation. You know, the act of giving and the act of sharing and things like that, and the satisfaction you receive really on the spot there. And then as far as going after, you know, money and success and that kind of thing, there's always that reaching, there's never quite enough.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's endless, and sometimes we think that's going to make us happy, but
exactly.
It doesn't necessarily. Yes?
Just two things I want to say. I want to distinguish one a little bit between poverty and suffering. I used to work for an international development organization. I've been really to some of the poorest places in the world, and sometimes we think poverty equals suffering. And I mean, I don't want to dismiss anyone's feeling of compassion, but as it goes to being hopeless, a lot of these people are not hopeless. Some of these very, very poor, impoverished people find great satisfaction and happiness from their lives and family. And for me, that made it easier to live with the fact that, well, any contribution that I make is a good contribution, but it's important, I think, not to be overwhelmed by by imagining the poverty and suffering are the same thing. But insofar as alleviating poverty is concerned, there's this commercial on TV, and it's it's like this pass it on kind of thing. I don't even know what it's for, but one person sees one person do a very small act of kindness, and it motivates them to do another. And there's something, we don't see it modeled a lot. We are, despite the fact that Americans give more money than any other people in any other country, we're not really a generous people. You certainly don't see that from a whole lot of our publicly elected officials, but people watch what we do as individuals, and people see generosity, and I think just by them seeing it, they get it, and I think it motivates people to experience themselves as part of that greater whole to which they benefit by contributing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Let's see, there are several people whose hands are up, and I think we don't have time for 3 questions, but let's start with, yes, Bruein.
I was going to wait for announcements. My name is Ty, and I work for the St. Anthony Foundation Free Clothing Program. And if you'd like an easy opportunity to practice generosity, I'd be glad to drive the van here some Sunday and park it out front, and y'all can just give me your clean, gently used clothes. Everything we get goes to the poor. We don't sell anything, and that would be just wonderful. So if we can talk about that at tea.
Thank you for that good work. St. Anthony's is wonderful. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much for your talk. I was just wondering, the way that this Sangha is organized is it's kind of based on a Dana model where we have like 80 jobs, and there's so many people that are doing everything, but there's a way that for this Sangha, it doesn't seem to work, where people will get into a job and then they'll be stuck in that job for years. And the generosity that they felt when they started the job may disappear, and a feeling of resentment comes in. I was really interested in the model that they use at the Zen Center, because I was wondering what we could do as a Sangha to kind of shift this so that people would spontaneously want to participate in this Sangha in some way, and for people who are ready to leave certain jobs, kind of allow them to gently exit from those things. If you have any wisdom about
well, it's quite wonderful that this Sangha, I don't know how many years you've been going on, but it's quite a few, isn't it? That it's all volunteer, and there are a number of Sanghas around the city that function that way. I recently spoke at the LGBT Center that has a Queer Dharma Group that's been going for 7 years. It was started by 2 people, Larry Yang and Ramon Gutierrez, and now there's a small group that keeps it going. So I wonder if everybody knows what jobs are needed to keep this group going, and if there's also, some regular appreciation for the people who are doing the jobs, and then maybe announcements that it's time for a change. Or, it's really important. I think if you come here often, to see what way you can contribute to the well-being of this group. And at Zen Center, we have an active volunteer program. Those of us who live in the building I bake cookies. It's my kitchen shift. We all have a kitchen shift every week. We have other jobs that we do every week, and those are not really voluntary. We're expected to do those when we move in. But we have many other volunteer activities, and our library is kept open by volunteers. Our bookstore is partly staffed by volunteers, and so on. I think it's just really making it a what do you say? Advertising the need, because if the same people are doing all the jobs for too long and kind of get burnt out, it's not going to be beneficial for the Sangha. So letting people know, and also, if there are jobs that various people do that you enjoy doing, letting people know that what's enjoyable about them, so that it can be really shared. Because I think otherwise you get into that feeling of you're doing it from obligation rather than from joy, and I think that everybody can at some point feel that. So I want to appreciate those of you who, and I don't know who you are, who are keeping this group going. It's quite wonderful to be able to come and talk to you on a Sunday and find a room full of people. And I think you meet every week, don't you? Yeah, that takes a lot of effort. So, thank you very much, those of you who are doing this. Yes, let's have this, Clint, be the last question.
I don't know if this is so much a question as just an observation from my part. There are some areas of my life where I have the opportunity to give, and I really enjoy it. It's very enriching. But I don't operate so much. Well, I operate a lot from the position of fear. I'm entering into my old age now, and I'm aware of the fact that there's not a whole lot of safety nets in this country if you can't take care of yourself. So I think we live in a culture that stresses so much individuality and autonomy and self-sufficiency that it doesn't create an environment where you're really safe in giving. It's like if I give, am I jeopardizing myself to have a reasonably comfortable old age for the rest of my life when I stop making income and so on? So I just want to, for me, I don't think it's so much greed as fear that keeps me back from giving as much as I could. It's just my own concerns about my future and who's going to look after me if I can't look after myself.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really important when you give not to give at your own expense. So trying to figure out what that is sometimes very challenging. And I think we each have to look at that for ourselves. And what do we need to save? What, and what can we freely give? And I think it's very individual for each person. And thinking about growing older and so hard to know exactly what your needs are going to be, where you may find housing, or when you have no income, only fixed income or savings or Social Security, how you're going to manage. So I think that does lend itself towards worry or fear. And then if you can't give away material things or money, what do you have to give? As you're aging, with all your life experience, you probably have a lot to give. So I think, thinking about giving in a broader way may be helpful until you have some sense of what it is you have to give, or, saving and then having a plan for after you die where that money would go if there's any left, so that you can have some sense that you'll be able to take care of yourself for the years that you have left. And none of us knows how many we have, But if we're worried about that, to have some savings, but a plan to have that money go to something that we care about if we die before it's used. So that, I don't know if that's of use to you, but I think that's a real concern. And something my teacher said to me once, which I found very helpful, that it's really important when you give, not to give at your own expense, in the sense that you're going to be hurting yourself by giving, because then you can't give freely. So I want to thank you all for your attention. It's almost 12 and I was asked to stop before 12 so we could all be out of here. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed being with you this morning.
Do we have any announcements?
I have one.
I just wanted to let you know that the speaker next week will be Subhana Cullen, and she's the director of this center. And she's going to be talking about the Heart Sutra. So it'd be nice to meet with someone from the center.
Mhm. Okay, our Queer Dharma Group meets once a month at San Francisco Zen Center, and our next meeting is Saturday, March 20th. We usually meet on a Saturday afternoon from 1:30 to 4, and we have sitting and a speaker and discussion and tea. And our speaker this month is Lien Shut, who's a priest at Zen Center. She's Vietnamese American. And I have a flyer which I could leave somewhere.
Sure, you could put it out. Yeah,
so 3 weeks from today, there will be a memorial for our GBF member, Don Mulheen, who spoke here last July in Nepal. His friends are going to be catering it. It'll be at Project Open Hand down on Polk Street at Ellis, so not impossible to get to from here. At 1:30, and it'll be, about half an hour, 45 minutes, and then a catered lunch afterwards. They've asked us to try and assemble a count, just a rough count of how many people will be there. George put up a poll on our Yahoo group, so if you've already responded there, please don't raise your hand. But if, does anybody by a show of hands think they might be able to attend or might be going to that, just so we can come up with a rough count? A couple? Okay.
What's the date, Tom?
The 28th. So it's the day after our day-long retreat, right?
No, it's the next, the 21st.
Okay, so it's a week after that. So plenty.
The day-long is the 20th.
Okay. So, but you can, if you're on the Yahoo group and you want to take time to decide, maybe over this next week, and that way we'll give them at least a couple weeks heads up.
What is the date of this memorial?
The 28th at 1:30 in the afternoon.
On Saturday, March 20th, we will be having an all-day sitting here. And there are flyers out by the Dharma Bowl to register. We'd like to, have people register as soon as possible so we can have an idea we're going to provide a lunch here. And so as soon as you know that you want to participate in that, if you could register and mail in your registration to Top Tuan, that would be very helpful. But it'll be Saturday, March 20th, from about 10 to 4:30.
Oh, just to add on to Ray's announcement, 11 people have signed up so far. So, and I'm coordinating the food that day, so if you'd like to be on the food committee, please talk to me. It's a very simple assignment, and it doesn't cost you anything, so. A few more places for a few more things. Thank you.
Carl.
Yeah. I just wanted to announce the group that Tova spoke about on Mondays at the LGBT Center. It meets every Monday at 5:30, and it's a very sweet group, a mixed group, LGBT, young and old and all, very diverse. And it's a half-hour sit, and then about a 20-25-minute Dharma talk and some announcements. Very similar format to here. A nice way to start the week after work on Monday at 5:30. It's right on Market, Market and Octavia, the LGBT Center, right where the freeway comes off.
Jim?
Yeah, there's, up by the Dharma Bowl is a new rough first draft of the GBF directory. If you have indicated on your signups that you want to be in the directory, you might want to check the listing for accuracy. And yeah, then we'll fix it and copy it out. Thank you. Oh, also, if you did it last week and your first name, you were on the first page just disappeared. So if you did it last week on the first page, do it again, please. Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements? So I'm the host, and there are freshly baked scones, and there's tea. If you have tea, please wash your cup. There's a Donna bowl I'll be bringing around, and we suggest a donation of $5 to $8 to help us rent the space and maintain the food. there's a group that will go to lunch at about 12:30 if you're interested in that. Hang out by the doors right around 12:30 when I'm shooing everyone out of the space. And there's also a sign-up sheet if you'd like to receive our newsletter either electronically or via snail mail. That's all the host announcements. So let us gather in a circle. So, would you like to do closing, or would you like to just read our statement?
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, and live believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.